Welcome to Talk with Claude. I'm here today with Hillary Neal Matchett. I knew Hillary back when I was living in Canmore, which was how many years ago now?
Oh,
Well, that would have been 12
7,
years ago. Diego's
12.
12, so
Oh,
that would
that's
have been
right.
12-ish years ago. Um, Hillary's got a kind heart. She moved to BC. I also moved to BC. I stayed in BC. You stayed 1 year in BC, you said?
Yeah, about 1 year. Yeah.
Yeah. And then moved off to Ontario, where she lives with her man and her 7-year-old and a new baby who's how old now?
Yeah, Charlie's 6 months old.
6-month old.
Mhm.
So, yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on. A lot of people might have questions, and I'm realizing I need to contact more with people where they are and not necessarily where I want everybody to be. For those of you who know me, you know I've talked about the economy. I've talked about a number of things that have the potential to happen. And here we are. We had a big bubble, and now we've got this virus little pin that's pricked our bubble. And a lot of people are kind of just starting to realize the magnitude of what's going on. And also, um, you know, I was listening to actually a report by Kitco Metals with geez, the name's going to come back there. Anyways, this fellow who wrote a book about a situation just like this, Jim Rickards. And the first thing he said is, if you think you know where we are right now, you don't. And if you don't know where we are right now, you're probably right. Okay. Things are
Mhm.
changing so quickly now, and there's so much different information's coming at us that nobody really knows where we are. So the approach I'm going to take right now is I'm going to stay open-minded to all kinds of possibilities. And I just want people to distinguish what they know, what they actually know, from what they believe or what they act on, because those are different things. Um, so I leave a lot of possibilities open in what I might say today during the conversation. But if you want to know what you believe, you look at how you act. So if you believe that whatever is happening right now, we're going to hunker down for a week or two and then go back to life as it was, then you're going to prepare as a function of that, and you're going to act that way. If you believe that the world has changed now and we're never going back, then you're also going to act a certain way, right? So
Mhm.
keeping that in mind, Hillary, let me know how things were maybe a month ago where you are.
Mhm.
So give us an
Yeah.
idea of what you started, what life was like, what you would call ordinary life, and then take
Yeah.
us into what happened in the last few weeks and how where you are right now.
Yeah. Okay. So about a couple months ago, life was normal for us. My 7-year-old was at school every day. I was home. I am still home, home on mat leave. My husband is a realtor, so he's in and out quite fluently, working all the time. Um, Friends and family stopping by, um, going to events, parties, what have you, and a little bit of a whisper of the coronavirus going on around the world, but nobody here was really concerned that I know of or that they ever spoke about. Um, and then I would say Thursday. So we're on what, Wednesday, or no, we're a week.
We're
It's been a
Thursday,
week.
so a week
We're
ago.
Thursday. Yeah, so a week ago. Um, I like to just say shit got real for a lot of people. That's kind of what happened. Things just really, really rapidly started shifting. School was canceled here in Ontario for the next 2 weeks. So we're on March break. So 3 weeks of kids at home, 2 weeks unplanned for sure. And then each day, more things unravel here. And was it yesterday or the day before, we have now it's been stated that we're in a state of emergency. And where I'm coming from with a lot of my concerns, it was just with my mommy friends and a lot of friends that I have that have anxiety. And this does add a huge load of stress to them. So whether they've thought about this happening or not, here we are in it and not feeling prepared and stressed and anxious and not having any of those external like support groups. So um, now I see a lot of moms posting on social media about how they're feeling depressed, they're sad, they're worried, they're anxious, and they don't really know what to do or what to make of it. So, you know, my husband and I just decided to have a little chat and make sure we were good. And that's what I'm trying to put out there is just have a chat. Make sure you as a home are good. Do you need to plant some things in your garden? Do you need to think about, you know, making some things at home? I don't think the reality is it's just going to be another 2 weeks. I think there's going to be a few more repercussions and if not plenty. So kind of brings me up to speed, I guess. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you mentioned that like for you guys in Ontario and the people in your environment, the big trigger seemed to be last Thursday. What was the announcement or what was the reality? Was it the schools closing that were announced last Thursday? Because the state of emergency is from this week, right? So
It is, yeah.
what made it sink in originally?
I think as we started hearing about cases coming closer to us, I know that's when, for me and my husband, we were like, okay, so, you know, I like to do things like, you know, cooking and baking and crafting and using nature and, you know, and he's a hunter. And so we did have that conversation. And that was just to make sure our unit was safe. So since Thursday when they announced, you know, yes, the kids are home, we were kind of like, okay, well, here we are. You know, we could take on some kids if we needed to, and let's just band together. This is just the kids at home. 2 days later, we actually don't want any other friends over. Let's just keep our distance. Let's not have my parents come by. Let's just get a few stocks in, you know, whatever we need. And that's, I think, the shock as more and more information comes, and we've seen the people posting about what's happened in Italy and in China and everything. I think that fear kicked in. So, like, you know, Thursday was school, Friday was, oh no, okay, things are really getting going. And then, you know, Saturday and Sunday over the weekend, I noticed just from my social media, people really going into stress, like straight to stress, anxiety. What are we going to do? This is terrible. So I guess, yeah, that's what I've seen in the last couple of days. I have a different take on it, but that's what it seems to be the overall picture, right?
Right. And as far as your personal situation, you were being a mother at home full time. You don't have a sideline or anything like that at the moment, because you said you had
Mhm.
when we talked earlier, you said you had a daycare. You weren't running a daycare out of your home or anything like
No,
that at the time, eh?
no. I work part-time for my husband as an assistant, and then I was waitressing part-time as well before I
Okay.
went on mat leave about 7 months ago.
Okay. So you're already on that leave. So as far
Yeah,
as your immediate change, you were kind of in a good place for school to get
absolutely.
canceled and stuff like that.
Oh gosh,
And I,
yeah. And I think we're really lucky for that. And that probably helps me just kind of go, okay, well now we're just gonna have to make it what it is, right? So I'm home and I'm pretty lucky and I'm pretty happy with that, to be honest. Yeah.
yeah, so you can understand, and I don't want to minimize that the importance of having a parent at home, whether it's the mom or the dad. Um,
Yeah.
for like for us, it's a decision we made. My Julie had a daycare for a number of years. Last year was her last year of daycare after 10 years operating, and she decided to take on being a learning consultant for a distributed learning school. So she is basically already working online, which is, my God, for us that's so God sent, because
Yes.
it allowed us to have the kids at home as well, because
Mhm.
they're home
Mhm.
learners. So that's one less stress. We don't have to reorganize anything. Now, as far as the parents, they had, your typical parent, the kids go to school, both parents work.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
a lot of them are maxed out on their bills already. So one day
Mhm.
they learn that, oh, school's closed now. They're already thinking, oh God, I got to reorganize everything, and maybe
Hmm.
I give up my job or what's going on. And then
Hmm.
maybe a few days later, they're like, okay, social distancing. Now
Yeah.
that doesn't necessarily cause every job to stop. Some jobs are still running, but like for myself, I was actually sick this fall. I had a really strange autoimmune disease that started creating gangrene in my foot. I was in the hospital for 3 weeks.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Yeah, and finally, they gave me autoimmune treatment, which is an immune suppressor, which is not great to have at this moment.
Of
But
course. Yeah. No.
yeah, but basically, I just started to work. Uh,
Hmm.
I'd I'd done about a week and a half of work when this
Hmm.
all came down. I was driving a bus for
Yeah.
the resort here,
Yeah.
so imagine like a full size,
Oh
not like
no.
Greyhound size, but more like a full size city bus full of
Yeah.
skiers back and forth all day with people coming in from everywhere in the world. And that's our reality in Revelstoke.
Hmm.
So Sunday, I think Saturday evening, my son came down with a fever. I
Yeah.
woke up Sunday morning. I had, like
Oh no.
a bit of tonsils, stuff like that. And I'm thinking, with all the information we just got, I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to be operating. It
Yeah.
seems my employer hasn't quite caught up to what's going on. If
Yeah.
I don't know if I've had it, if I have it still, because I
You
still have
have
a
it.
few symptoms.
Yeah.
Nobody has
Yeah.
an idea because they won't test, right? So that's
Yeah.
a big problem. So I tried to reach the 811 line,
Hmm.
which is the information line as to what to do with certain health issues and stuff like that. After 2 days of trying, of calling multiple times a day, I couldn't even get an answering service, let alone talk to a person.
Right.
After 2 days, I actually got the answering service, which kind of refers you to the website. So I
Yeah.
went on the website, and basically they're not doing mass testing or anything. And the test
Mhm.
also takes a week to come out, even if you did test.
Right.
So maybe we'll talk about the tests itself a little later on, but
Sure.
just to say that I took the decision, I took it upon myself to call in and say, listen, I've got symptoms. If this was any other time, I could
Yeah.
totally go to work. Like, I'm not so sick that I can't go to work, but I am so sick that in this context, I don't know if I'm going to be transmitting that to every single person, and they're going to distribute that everywhere.
Yeah.
And also,
Absolutely.
I'm immune compromised, which means if somebody has
Yeah.
it and gives it to me now, whether,
Right.
because I
You're
don't know whether
injected.
or not I already have it, but if I
I
get
know.
it, then I could be in trouble and
Yeah.
suffer quite a bit more.
Hmm.
So a lot of jobs are like that. That was one example, was my job. I know in a lot of places they're keeping daycares open so parents can go to work,
Yeah.
but
Hmm.
from having, and you've operated a daycare, we've operated a daycare,
Yeah.
like the reality of social distancing with young kids,
It's not
like there's
happening.
a reason
No.
why there is, there'll be outbreaks
Hmm.
of lice, and if somebody
Yes.
catches a cold, then everybody
That's if
catches
they
it.
all
And
have it. Yeah.
daycares have the reputation of being the epicenter of distributing
Yeah.
disease,
Well, the kids,
right?
they don't
uh,
care. They're like, here, do you want to? Here, I just chewed on this. You have a chew now. Like they don't,
yeah,
care at all.
and to be
So
honest,
daycare.
we've loved our daycare parents over the years, but to be
Mhm.
honest, typically if parents have to go to work and their kid is sick, I think
I know.
subconsciously they always see them as being less sick than they are, and they'll bring them in. They're like, oh, it's just a little runny nose, or he's got a
Yeah.
bit of a cough, but it's nothing, right? But if the parents have a healthy kid and they come to bring him to the daycare and learn that there's a kid that's sick there, they'll
They're
actually
like,
make an effort to take him out and not bring him there, right?
yeah,
So
totally.
there's kind of
Yeah.
this double standard going on, but everybody does it. So in the end,
Yes.
things get transmitted really easily. So that can be really a strong vector for spreading the virus right now if daycares stay
Mhm.
open, even though schools are closed, which is uh,
Right.
something really
So
strange to me.
daycares are still open where you are because everything's been shut down here for the most part. The only thing that is open would be grocery stores and pharmacies. And then I believe like the liquor store is open. We have the LCBO here, so it's reduced the hours, but generally speaking, everything else should be shut down.
Yeah.
So,
Well, what I'm finding is that, Canada overall, I think, is in a very privileged position to deal with what's going on because it started elsewhere.
mhm,
Because now we have data on how quickly it spreads, what kind of
yeah,
uh, numbers curve it spreads with, these exponential curves that you've probably seen if you've looked at the website. I can actually, I'll just quickly go to, I'll do a share screen here. Give me a second. um, there we go. So just so that people know what I'm talking about here, I'm just gonna share a screen. Go here. Okay, can you see this?
yes, I can. Yeah.
Okay, um, so total cases today. So this is Worldometer coronavirus. It's just like it's kind of live update on the situation. So 230,717 cases worldwide, 9,390 deaths, and 86,261 have recovered as of today.
Hmm.
Okay, now I did a video using this, I think 2 days ago, and the numbers are still moving quite a bit. There's still 135 active cases worldwide, and obviously those 135,000 people, um, those are the ones we know about. The problem
Yeah.
with this disease is, for example, we know today who was infected 10 to 14 days ago. We don't know who's infected today because 10 to 14 days ago, people were walking around, going to the grocery store.
Yeah.
10 to 14
Absolutely.
days ago, people were still going skiing. I was still
Yeah.
working, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
So we don't know who's infected today. We know who was infected 10 to 14 days ago. Now, in 10 to 14 days, we're going to find out who's infected today,
Yeah.
right? So people really need to get that. It's a much more contagious disease than
Yeah.
your common cold. Okay.
Absolutely.
So, and what this does, if you look at these are the total cases. So you see there's a little jump here in kind of a level
Hmm.
off, and then it takes off again. So a lot of this initial curve here was in China. And then this is kind of the breakout when it kind of spread out. Now, there wasn't a lot of testing. All of a sudden, they started testing. So you get this kind of jump in this awareness of official cases, right? And then
Hmm.
if you look at
Hmm.
this curve here, this is where we are today.
Yeah.
So we're still on that upward curve. So we haven't seen the half of it yet. Now,
Yeah.
hopefully, because of actions that we've taken, because we've been aware, especially in Canada, we were aware early of this was going on. So I think we
Hmm.
may have taken, we may have been late on the ball a little bit, but we have taken some measures now that along the lines of this curve will have shown up like earlier on the curve scale compared to
Hmm.
Europe, for example, where they,
Right.
they didn't control, they didn't take it seriously until things got really bad. And then everybody kind of woke up together into this horror, right? So this is
Right.
what we're trying to avoid. Um, so that's the worldwide cases. And you can go to this website here and they have it by country as well.
Right.
And just to give you an idea, like China, well, I mean, they have an excuse. That's where it originated. So they were playing catch up. They had no data to go on.
Right.
So, when you look at the number of deaths, considering how many people are in their country, I mean, they did
Hmm.
relatively well.
Right.
All things
Hmm.
they've got billions of people in their country, right? So
Hmm.
now it's not over. They still have over 7,000 active cases, but if they manage
Yeah.
them well, hopefully it doesn't spread much past that. But we're always kind of late on the curve, right? Because there's a lot of
Hmm.
people going around right now that don't have symptoms that may
Hmm.
be spreading it, and that's why we have to be really disciplined. And it's I remember, like, for myself, I'm I tend to be very prepared for certain things, but
Yeah.
I remember it being really a very hard thing to do that Sunday when I decided to call in sick and not go to work. It was,
Yeah.
despite everything I knew, every fiber of my being is like, you're not that sick, you can go to work, right? And
Well, and
work is
that's not what
there.
we're conditioned to do that. I mean, and I've always kind of said that to my husband, is we've always kind of been like, oh, you're not that sick, you could still go to work. And I've said this even before this outbreak, is what would happen if, when we weren't feeling all that great in those early stages, if we did choose to stay home, what might happen? Like, but we're told, especially, and it's a mentality a lot of workplaces have, are, oh, is he really sick, or is she da 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 da. So I think it's definitely, this is a really this is a really relevant time to point that out.
Yeah, and you know what?
Oh,
A lot of people will jump to pointing out that that the main issue was, well, I need a paycheck, I need to go to work. But I know that that Sunday it wasn't actually that. It wasn't. I mean, I was just starting work again. We're not, you know, we weren't in a good place because I've been off work for so long in my case, because I was already sick with this autoimmune disease in the fall. So for sure, maybe that motivation was there, but that wasn't my
yeah,
main motivation. It's this
yeah,
commitment that I made to go to work. And you know, I don't know if it's a more masculine trait, but I felt like really kind of responsible, or like I need to man up and get to work kind of thing, right? And I'm
hmm,
really fighting that kind of attitude that's really, really strongly ingrained, and say, well, I'm not doing
yeah,
anybody any favor. And if I look, you know, when we look at, like, if you look at the list here, if you look at Italy, if you look at Spain,
hmm,
and if you were to go back, like they have now and yesterday, right? So um you can jump back and forth, but if you look at what's gone on in those countries, and you work
yeah,
your way back to the number of cases that we have right now in Canada, you know what's going
yeah,
to happen, because that's kind of looking back in time, and the
yeah,
numbers will tell
absolutely.
you what you can expect. If you
Hmm,
know, a lot of people don't quite understand the exponential function, right? There's
hmm,
a doubling time, right? So if you start
yeah,
off with one case, then and with this virus, if you start off with one case and they just go around with everyday life, they'll infect at least 4 people in a day,
yeah.
right? So
It's crazy. Yeah.
the doubling is just huge, right? Um so that's really what made it or broke it for me, making that decision. I'm like, well, I know where this goes, so I'm going to stay home, and I know it won't matter, because within a few days or weeks everything will be closed
Yeah.
anyways.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. Yeah.
right now my work is still operating because they need to move people around. It's a bit like the airlines are still operating, and people are wondering why. There's a lot of people that are outside their homes that, if you close the airlines right now, they're just stuck. And I have friends
Mhm.
that are um, in they were visiting in Sri Lanka and Africa, and they were having trips around the world, and they had no idea what's going on. And all of a sudden,
Yeah.
they, same as you described, they just went like, boom, oh my God, I've got to get home now. But everybody
Yeah.
kind of had that reaction together. So now everybody's trying to cram into these flights, but they're just,
Yeah.
the flights weren't meant to operate like that, with everybody wanting to take the flight the same day, right? So the airlines are really scrambling. They're leaving services open. That's why it's happening. Of course, it's
Mhm.
also a huge vector for transmission, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And same
Yeah.
as the bus services and the taxi
Yeah.
services. But yeah, hopefully we can restrain our activities to really essential stuff and not take this lightly, so we can lessen the impact. So I
Well,
just,
and I
yeah.
think, yeah. Sorry, what was that, Claude?
So yeah, I just wanted to show that. And if we
Yeah.
quickly look at Canada's numbers today, according to this source, we're up to 770 total cases, with 43 new cases today,
Mhm.
9 deaths, no new deaths today, and there's one critical. So that's our picture in Canada. But like I said, we're
Mhm.
privileged, because if you go
Yeah.
back in time, say, you know, any kind of country that would resemble our system in Norway or Belgium, or maybe Australia would be, Australia is doing very similar to us. I mean,
Mhm.
in BC here, we've got Vancouver as a port to a lot of Asian traffic where the virus originated. So
Mhm.
we're kind of an entry point. So that puts us
Yeah.
more in line, say, and Ontario is probably next after that, and then it lessens, right? So
Yeah, I know. Yeah, a couple of days ago, in those early, there was a few in Ajax, which is less than about an hour from us. And so I think when I mentioned that people around us that's it. There are cases here, like it's here. I think that's when you really realize too, okay, it's got real, like things are happening here. So we need to kind of hunker down and make these choices and really like think about that. But I also think some interesting stuff has come from this, and a lot of people are focusing on how scary and awful it is. And once you've decided that, you know, you're going to be home and you've accepted that, there's actually a lot of other really crazy, amazing things that have been happening. And, you know, like our admissions, the pollution all around us is lessened. Um, I'm also noticing a ton of communities online that are kind of banding together, and a lot of beautiful things to kind of help perk people up and keep them energized. And, you know, one of the local communities close to here over St. Patrick's Day, all the kids were running, you know, they want to all play, but they can't. So they ended up doing a scavenger hunt throughout the city where, you know, they put shamrocks in windows and kids had to go find them all. So keeping that social distance, but still, you know, making a community. And that's what I really, you know, want to focus on. And I think it's kind of a beautiful thing in a way. I know it's tragic and it's awful and there's terrible things and there's a lot of worry and so there should be. But I think once you swallow that and just decide to look at that and say, okay, what do we need to feel like a safe environment in our homes? Because that's what we can control, is what's in our house and what's around us. And then focus on, this is the time to recenter with my kids. This is the time to, you know, get to those projects I didn't have a chance to, and have those conversations with your husband or your kids, you know, so that keeps coming up with me. And so looking at all of those things, it's just like it's not a surprise anymore, you know, it's not a surprise at all. But I do think if we can just change the way we think about our everyday routine. And, you know, I know Justin Trudeau just put out a bunch of subsidies, and I'm sure it's not going to cover everybody, but I'm actually really happy to see him making some effort. And I think that's more than some countries have done so early on as well, to expect that 6 months down the road, we're going to have, you know, all sorts of upheaval and people are going to need to find homes. But it does bring out some, once we set aside that stress and worry and panic, it does bring out this other side of people, which is, you know, thinking about those loved ones and picking up the phone. Oh my goodness, I've been on the phone all week and I'm not upset about it. People are calling me, they want to chat, how are you doing, what's going on? And there's a different tone of communication there that we've just, like, you know, when I was a teenager, we spent hours on the phone if we weren't spending hours with another person. And we've lost touch with people, even though there's more people in one place. We've just lost sight of, you know, actually having a conversation with them, and, you know, that with your kids, your husband, whatever it may be, your home, giving those attentions elsewhere. So do you find that that's happening with you guys at all, or is this just staying the same for you being homeschoolers?
No, actually, being homeschoolers is kind of interesting right now because you know how one of the first things people will ask you when you're a homeschooler, they're like, homeschool, well, how do you socialize your kids?
I
Like we
know.
keep them locked
Yeah,
up in the basement or something.
I
I
know.
don't know what this crazy imagination that public schools have put into people's minds, like this kind of mind
Yeah,
control that homeschooling is about locking up your kids and protect them from the real world, right? Like, and to
yeah,
us, now that we live the homeschooling life, and I'd even add to that that our style of homeschooling is has been dubbed radical unschooling, because
yes,
our
yeah.
kids follow their passions. They don't get punished, they get guided. We treat them
Mhm.
as you would treat your you we treat them as our equals at a different stage, and they share stuff with us that really help us, and we share stuff with them.
Yeah.
um I don't put myself above my kids, but they know I have, you know, life experiences that they can benefit from, and then they
Mhm.
have that unrestricted imagination and ideas and concerns that are different than mine that I can learn from. But
Mhm.
it's a it's really a partnership that we have with our kids that I find is really lacking in society. And some people, it's like, oh yeah, you guys just let them do whatever they want. It's not like that. You really have to live it to understand. But anyways, I'm going off on a bit of a tangent now. But um, so
Well, I gotta tell you something for 1 second. I just have to interrupt. Did you know that I was homeschooled?
you were homeschooled, eh?
Did you
Yeah,
know
I
that?
think I recall that. I think you mentioned that
Yeah.
at one point. Yeah,
Okay. All right. I just wanted to put it out there
yeah.
since we're on the topic.
Right on.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Um,
wasn't, but I didn't have a very, I know that a lot of things that really mattered in my life were done outside of school. School kind of got in the way. School was that busy work that I had to go through and get kind
yeah.
of depressed about. School is where I got bullied as a kid.
Yeah.
Um, and I longed for those exciting things I would do with my own drive, my own learning that I enjoyed outside of school. And that was my experience. And I know it's not the same for everybody. And I know some
Mhm.
people that didn't have a very fun or very positive home life that really appreciated having met good people in school that helped them out.
Being
And I
outside of it.
totally
Yeah.
get it. I'm not throwing out the baby with the bathwater, but reality is right now, there is no school. And then
Yes.
the other reality is that it will probably be the case for quite some time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
If
Mhm.
you looked at that exponential curve I showed early on, we're just at
Yeah.
the beginning of this, unfortunately. And I think that
Mhm.
hasn't sunk in with a lot of people, but the world's about to change, but not all that change is going to be negative. And to get back to your question,
Mhm.
because we homeschool and throughout the week, everybody's in school, we don't keep our kids isolated, but the system does
No.
because it takes all the kids away and locks them up in a building the same way that they
Yeah.
kind of project that onto us. Like we're the ones locking
Mhm.
them up in a building, right?
Yes.
The type of social interactions that my kids have always had have been voluntary, unlike the
Yeah.
school where you're forced into relationships with people that you don't have an affinity for just because
Mhm.
they're the same age as you.
Right.
um, it leads to that bullying and leads to these kind of, it's a bit like being in a prison. That's why there's so much rape and bullying and awful things that
Yeah.
happen in prisons, because you're forced together and you can't get away from people that you shouldn't hang out with, right? So
Yeah.
my kids don't have that. They choose their friends, and yeah, there might be some teasing and some playing around, but I haven't witnessed bullying. I've witnessed them, if they want to keep playing, then they have to sort out their stuff, and that's an
Yeah.
extremely important skill. Now what I've seen lately is that now, we live close to a really nice open space where we go for walks. We just got Cosmo, our little black lab, recently,
Mhm.
so we have to take him out for walks quite often. And now we're
Mhm.
meeting a bunch of families that, and we're, because of that, this social distancing. Well, we're coming across them, but we kind of have to stay far. But they're kind of together quite a bit, right? So
Yeah.
we're really starting to witness parents reconnect with their children, which, my God, they're
Absolutely.
so lacking in our society. So that's
Yeah.
super good to, and that's kind of one of the things that are coming out of this that's super positive.
Yeah. Yeah.
My
Definitely.
kids, to socialize, if you're still wondering how I socialize my kids, well, I don't socialize my kids, but my kids socialize themselves quite a bit.
Yeah.
And so one of the ways they were doing it is that every Saturday we had Dungeons and Dragons, which keeps the kids busy for like 5 to 6 hours in the afternoon, something like that.
Yeah.
And I did Dungeons and Dragons as a kid. It's a role playing game where you have like these character sheets and you have like this much health and dexterity and strength, and then you play
Mhm.
role kind of what you do and how you interact with the other players in the game. So it's like a video game but for real. There's a lot of
Right.
writing involved. There's a lot of math involved and dice
Mhm.
rolling and statistics and stuff like that. But you're not realizing that you're learning all that just for the sake of learning it. You're learning it because you need to use it. So
Yeah.
it's one of the things that motivated my youngest kid, who wasn't as, I don't think he has my personality, and I wasn't a very enthusiastic reader, but it really
Yeah.
motivated him to read because he needed to learn those things. Whereas my oldest kid is just like, I don't know anybody who reads like he does. It's just amazing to see, and it's his own talent. I mean, read stories to them. And then that one day, I think he was 10 when he grabbed the book from me and says, you're too slow. I'm just going to read this on my own. Like, but that's him. That's him. It can happen at different ages for different kids and stuff. It doesn't,
Absolutely.
everybody's individual, at their own rate that way. So
Absolutely.
that's definitely one thing I've seen. I've also, when I tell people, the world has changed, and I don't think we're going back to the way things were, but that's not necessarily a bad thing either. One thing I'm
Hmm.
really noticing starting to happen, and I kind of predicted it as well, um, some time ago, is when everything seems good and authorities have a strong control on the narrative and what's going to happen and where the money goes and who owes what to whom, people seek power for the pleasure of having power.
Hmm.
But when things go down the toilet and things are hard, you're going to see, and you're already starting to see if you're paying attention, these people you never heard about starting to take charge, offering stuff, realizing, having the intelligence to anticipate what people will need and getting ahead of the curve so that to lessen the pain on everybody. And you're
Yeah.
starting to have people who are real natural leaders who
Yeah.
weren't necessarily leading because they weren't hungry for power. They weren't drawn to this, positions of power. And also, you're seeing a lot of incompetent people that have placed themselves in situations of really high power that are
Hmm.
being revealed for the idiots that they are.
Right.
I don't know if you're
Yeah.
seeing that, but I'm certainly seeing that. And it's not everybody. It's not because people were in a situation of power that they're necessarily idiots and they're going to be dethroned. But you're certain people are, it's like being at a poker game and people are finally putting their cards down and you're seeing what everybody has to offer, right?
Yeah.
Because there's nothing to gain right now from being in
Right.
a position of
Hmm.
power when everything's going downhill and things are changing so quick that you can't
Yeah.
really anticipate, right? So I think
No, and you, yeah.
I think it's a real call for people to help each other out, to find your value and to find your courage and realize. I mean, you've done expeditions. We both used to be in whitewater rafting, right? That
Hmm.
seems like
The
so
good
long
old
ago
days.
now, right? But
Yep.
in the backcountry, you don't do things because you're going to get money from your fellow travelers with, right? you,
No.
you you do things because you realize in your group everybody has something to offer, and everybody
Yeah.
has needs or wants or longings for something, companionship and friendship, and so you kind of find this natural hierarchy of things, and natural reworking. Like, you can have people that work in the corporations and all have these titled positions, but when they go out
Right.
in the backcountry to enjoy life, they're not beholden to that, right? Everything changes.
No.
Everybody, it's a different
Yeah.
environment. I think that's what we're going into. I think people are going to find they're going to find a space where they fit in into this new paradigm, and it's a real opportunity for people to shine in difficult times.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's where a lot of the fear comes from as well, right? That taking away whatever that power, that confidence, that whatever, and you have to really rethink the way you're thinking to make yourself enjoy or see benefits in this. And I agree with you. I personally don't think that this is just going to be gone in a blink of an eye. I think we're kidding ourselves if we think in 2 to 3 weeks our kids are going back to school. I just don't see that happening. And, people going back to work, I think it's going to take time, and just to, like I said before, just accept it and choose to now make the best of what we've got. So many people are just so worried and so stressed, but we can't control all that, So
Yeah, and I mean, to those people, I'd like to say you can do this. You
yeah,
have
there
it.
you go.
You have it in you. You were just never put in a position to know that you have it in you, and you're about to learn it.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
don't know
and
what
you're
you're able to do until you have to do it. And I've seen this number of times because
yeah,
we both have worked in the backcountry. You know,
yeah,
I've come close to death many times. I've I've had to deal with death and with
Hmm.
hardship in situations where there isn't this immediate backup. And I've
Yeah,
seen people sh- shine when you would have never thought that of them. So
absolutely.
trust in your own sacred power here. um
Yeah.
and it's yeah, like I said, it's not a bad thing, but I don't think things are going back. And it makes you think. There, we have down in Southside in Revelstoke, we have quite
Hmm.
a big old Italian community. And every summer they'll do these great big gardens, and you're thinking, why are they working so hard making these great big gardens all their
Hmm.
lives? The kids are gone, they're by themselves, they're producing way
Yeah.
more food than they can eat.
Yeah.
But you got to understand, like, these cultures come from somewhere, and it's these kinds of multi-generational scars of these events that have happened in the past that set
Yeah.
this culture in
Programmed you.
motion.
Hmm.
And I think those Italians will probably do really well this year. I think they're going to become they might
Absolutely.
have been very lonely, but I don't think they're going to be lonely now.
No.
I think they're going to be
No.
very popular people in the community. And this
Yeah.
was what I mean by people come out of nowhere and start to shine. It was like,
Yeah.
where was this person for the last 10 years that I didn't know about? All
Mhm.
of a sudden, like,
You
you,
didn't
you,
know how to
you
appreciate them
realize
as
that you
well, right?
can't do without them. All
Yeah.
these artists that have been twerking on MTV or whatever it is now that kids listen to, that have drawn that much attention, and where so much resources have been thrown. Like, people are going to be like,
Hmm.
I don't have time for that shit.
No.
So
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's this interesting. Like I've always taken an interest in, sewing and growing a garden, and my husband's a hunter, and those things are all like more sustainable and specifically sustainable for our little family, our little bubble that we're living in. Um, and I do, a little tiny piece of me, just this little bit, just goes, okay, well, this is sort of exciting that we get to really focus on my garden. That this is a little bit more exciting for us, that I can show my son some more sewing, and we can talk about that and create more things together. And that's what I keep getting back to. I keep going back to that, and I just want to shed some light on that for those people in those super stressful times. Like, just take a step back, take a deep breath, and think about stop thinking about your every single day whatever, and just think about what you've got around you and what you're going to do with it and how are you going to make the best of it. My son the other day just took an old box out of our recycling and made a fully working um, not ping pong table, but oh, now I'm not, an old, like a video game with paddles, flipping the balls around and hitting and making
oh,
points.
like pinball.
Um, Thank you, pinball.
Pinball.
He
Yeah,
made
yeah,
this
yeah.
pinball machine, and he's going on about it for hours. And I mean, there's no screens involved. He stole some toothpicks and some string and maybe some tape, and off you go to the races. That was hours of activities, and I think that was really beneficial. And it's exciting to see those little things. I mean, I'm not going to deny it. He's not used to this situation, and he's had some stress and frustrations and just de-winding from the everyday that he's so used to. He's in grade 2, and so for him, like, it's been a change, it's been a switch in gears. And so we did make a little day-to-day activity of just when we have when my baby has nap times, and we'll work on some work, so I know I can give him some of my attention specifically, and to be outside. And he loves this. He is ecstatic. He's over the moon. He runs over to the board and he says, oh, it's 12 o'clock. So that means lunch is coming next. Okay, good. Got it. And he is just in, the 7-year-old phase, but he's also having to slow down. And I think over time he will learn and need to use that less and less. But right now he feels, it's his sense of comfort in knowing what's next in his day to day. And so that's one of the things we've been doing, actually, that's been very helpful for his transition, into this new phase, this new timing and slowing down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I really take the parent-child connection at heart. I think that was a big scar in my childhood, despite the fact that, from the exterior, I'm sure, I wasn't the worst off, and I had
Mhm.
parents that did some really good things. But as a child, with my parents splitting up when I was 11-ish, my dad worked quite hard. He wasn't there a lot, even though I really longed to connect with him. In my
Yeah.
adulthood, I connected with him quite a bit, and I miss him very
Yeah.
much because he's passed away now.
Mhm.
And we used to Skype. I mean, even though I lived 5,000 kilometers away, I used to Skype call like 3 times a week, and we used to have these great big discussions. And we
Wow,
usually
that's lovely.
didn't agree on much, but it just brought life to the discussion, and we could still love each other after those
Yeah.
big discussions. So it was great.
Mhm.
So I opened up obviously a lot of people are inquiring now about homeschooling. So
Oh.
I made um, we have a homeschool group on Facebook for the homeschoolers that have already established themselves as homeschoolers for a while. But
Mhm.
there was a lot of demand on that group, and that was kind of creating some difficulties. So I opened up a new group called Welcome to Homeschooling Revelstoke, and we're just
Nice.
doing the half post. A lot of people are getting on there and inquiring, and I invited, as much experienced homeschoolers, new homeschoolers, teachers, any school staff right now that's laid off.
Yeah.
If you really believe in your work and what you were doing, then you need you need to change your methods and find out how you can support the parents now, right?
Mhm.
And
Absolutely.
we all need to help each other, and this might be a new environment for you, but I really believe in the teachers. I think, I'm not a big fan of the public schooling system. I think there's a lot of problems with it, but once again, I'm not throwing out the baby with the bathwater. There's a lot of good people that really want to do good, and a lot of probably the ones that want to do it the most weren't always able to be put in a position where they can really maximize their impact. Here's your
Yeah.
chance. Here's your chance. The
Yeah.
world has changed. You can make of it whatever you want. You can stay home
Yeah.
and drink wine, or you can realize that your community still needs you. That's why, although that tax money is going into trying to keep those schools open now, no amount of money will keep them open right now. You need to use your
Mhm.
imagination, the technological means that, we're talking to each other across
Yeah.
the country right now.
Yeah.
We live in such a privileged time now. This isn't 1918 with the Spanish flu, where all this technology wasn't there, and
No, it's
self-isolation would have meant death. We still
yeah.
can do so much to help each other out, so let's get out there. So I just wanted to mention, I'm just going to do a real quick screen share, and let me know what you think. As a parent who unschools and homeschools, home educates their kids, I kind of put up kind of a 10-step or 10-point pathway to home education. And the people need to know it's not instantaneous. Your kids need to adapt to the new situation, and you need to adapt to the new situation. So
Yeah.
I'll
That's
just talk
fine.
about those guidelines, and maybe you can comment. Let me just do the screen share again real quick. There. How's that looking?
All right.
All right, so this is the pictures of Diego making his pizza, which is probably his
Oh, it's
favorite
sweet.
food. No, for those of you who know me from Keto Power Fitness, no, it's not keto pizza, but he loves it, and we don't impose on our kids the way they should eat.
Yeah.
We educate them, and then we encourage them to make their decision, and we respect that, and we buy stuff for them to go ahead and make their decision. And you'll be surprised how good the decisions that they can make, and how enthusiastically. And we can see the mozzarella here, and this one here I think is pizza dough from La Baguette, from Le Marché in Revelstoke, but he has been known to make his own dough as well. So anyways, a pathway to home education. Number one, reassure both kids and parents, reassure yourselves. Okay, one of the first things that parents would tell me when I suggest that they should consider homeschooling is like, oh, I could never do that. Well, you know
Mhm.
what? Now you're going to do it.
Now you have to. You don't
So
get a choice now.
exactly. And it's one of those things that when you have the choice, you're like, oh, I'm not doing it because I can't do it. But when you have to do it and you will do it, then you're
Yeah.
going to be able to do it. So trust in yourself and reassure your kids too that, you know, you're going to make mistakes. They're going to make mistakes, but make sure that they're in a safe space. Learning is about making mistakes, finding out what your mistakes were and correcting them, and then moving on. So
Yeah.
it's time for them to make mistakes so that they can learn from it. They don't have a family that depends on the whole world's gonna crumble because your kid made a mistake. So let them make their mistakes and then use that as learning opportunities. Okay. Reconnect as a family before you even go and think about curriculum and that they have to do their math tables and everything else. That's not going to work if you don't reconnect. Your kids you've sent them off to school. You've sent them off. You've disconnected from them. I know I'm not being accusatory. You have to go to work. Bills have to be paid. You provide a nice home for them. You provide food for them, and that has a cost in your relationship. So don't beat yourself up over it. But the truth is that you've been disconnected from your kids because they've had to connect with school. They've had to connect with their teachers, with their peers, and they've had to survive and thrive in that environment. And your home environment is quite different. And you guys need to reconnect before you try to accomplish anything. Okay. And once you start to reconnect, number 3 is make a plan. Okay. Let your child know and try to figure out where it is you want to go with this. And I guarantee you, if you're new at this, you're going to make a plan and your plan's going to break down. You're not going to follow through with it. It's not going to work out as planned, but
No.
it's still good to have a plan and to know where
It's
it
nice
is you
to
want to
have a
go. Because
plan.
if you don't know where you're aiming, you can't reach any kind of target. And
Absolutely.
you'll need to
Hmm.
reassess your plan regularly and that's going to evolve and you know kind of forgive yourself for that for sure. Okay. And then number 4, I think, is really important. Be a model. Okay. And you know, it's one thing to tell your kids, oh, you know, no screen time, but if you're constantly on your phone and you tell them no
Yeah.
screen time, that's not going to work. They learn so much by how you act, so much more than what you tell them. Sure, you can use force and punishment and control to keep them from doing stuff that you decide to do for yourself, but that's only going to work as long as you're willing to put so much energy into controlling them that you rupture
Hmm.
that relationship again. So
Hmm.
don't ask of them as children to avoid things that you can't even avoid as an adult. So
Hmm.
work on yourself being a model and don't worry
Yeah.
so much about them, and what you do, they're going to imitate. So if you don't want them to drink alcohol all day long, well, don't sit there and drink alcohol all day long. And I know it's tough, especially when times are stressful, but don't have them have a bar that's higher than yours. Respect their people too, and they have their weaknesses too. And just talking about that can be a real opportunity to learn.
Hmm.
Participate in their chosen activities. Okay, let them choose the activities as much as possible. Right, that's one thing they didn't have in school, is that, you
Hmm.
know, they get told what to do, right? And so if they're home, if they're keen on doing something that's really interesting to them, they're more likely to learn trying to accomplish something or doing something that they really like. And sometimes you might be
Absolutely.
surprised
Hmm.
that might even include video games.
Yeah,
All right.
totally.
One thing we did as parents, which was really hard at first, because you kind of, oh, they're in front of the screen and you're disconnected from what they're going through on the screen and you don't get it. And you just feel them being disconnected from you. And it gets really frustrating. So one of the things we did, we encouraged them to join us in our activities. At the time we were doing mountain biking or ski touring or going for a walk or whatnot, or participating in chores. We've got, you know, a lot of chores around the house and stuff. And that has to be a two-way street. So we let them invite us in their video games. And so
Absolutely.
we played Minecraft and they taught us how to play Minecraft because I was a real klutz at it. And Roblox and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
So the amount of enjoyment and pride you take in getting your kids to do stuff that's part of your world is the
Mhm.
same thing they feel when they can convince you to be part of their world. So don't hesitate
Mhm.
to find out what's going on in their world, and that they'll just bring that connection, and that'll really help you when you see them on the screen. You can relate to what they're doing. You're not just seeing them on a screen
Yeah,
wasting time necessarily. Obviously,
absolutely.
you need to balance that out however it needs to be balanced out, but get into their world. That's really important. And then observe their interactions in the learning. So much learning happens in real life, right? Give me an example of learning that you observe in real life from your kids. And you have two totally different ages. You could probably find tons of stuff from either ages.
Oh my goodness, all the time, all the time. Yeah, like my 7-year-old Jack, he's pretty creative. So whenever we're outside, like he's out there collecting pine cones. He's inside building things. His favorite thing to do right now is anything cardboard. He's building. He's constantly building something. He's cutting holes. He's stacking them. He's building homes and channels and tunnels. And that is like we love it. It's amazing. But I do joke about having to like take the recycling out and hide it from him. But our basement may be full of boxes, and I surely his room at least has 3 or 4 in there. But just by his choice, and he loves to build and create things right now. And just for us to come and see what he's been up to, what he's doing is like it's his greatest joy. He likes this more than Lego right now. It's amazing. Um, and my little guy, who is Charlie, he's 6 months, he's always teaching me patience. I mean, I gotta say, I like to get things done and I like to be efficient. And it's like starting over again with a baby 7 years later, but patience. It's not there's lots of other things he can teach us, but he's a joy. And I just have to remember to slow down. And before all this happened, he was probably my biggest reminder to just slow down. This goes by really fast, and try to take it in. So I guess those are two learning points for us that are just in the moment kind of things.
Yeah, I mean, for the audience members that haven't had children, like
Hmm.
you can't imagine when you have a young child to get ready and you want to go somewhere. Imagine
Yeah.
this 15-minute trip and it turns into this multi-day expedition.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Like
definitely.
literally,
Sometimes
yeah.
oh yeah,
Five
it can
minutes
take
turns into
us,
3 hours to get things
yeah,
done. So
to get
yeah,
things
if you've got
done.
parents in your community and you can support them by helping out, they will
Yeah.
appreciate it so much. And as I think we're about to go through it again. Julie
Yes,
due in July.
that's amazing. Congratulations.
Well, I mean, you remember Julie. You were here for us. I mean, she had severe depression in
Yep.
it was 2007, I think, when we had
It was a hard
Diego.
time.
She went through a lot. Those were
Hmm.
learning things that we need to go through. Oh my God. And
Yep.
to watch her deal with the situation and trust people around her that need to do things, and she does what she needs to do.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I mean, the reason why we put it off for 10, 12 years before having it, we always had
Yeah.
planned a bigger family, but she was on medication that prevented us from procreating, and
Hmm.
we found ways to get her off that and get her the help she needed.
Good.
And
That's amazing.
now, and by the way, if you're looking for resources to deal with anxiety, get off antidepressors, anti-anxiety medication, write me a note. I know a lot they say like in the States, 1 woman in 4 is on antidepressors.
Yep.
And
That's a lot. Hmm.
there are ways around that. We've done so much work on that, and so it's so good to watch her just kind of get through these hard times. And she's
Yeah.
not sheltered from what can potentially happen. She's got me in the house, and like I don't
Yeah.
hide anything from her, right? And
Yep.
if you
Hmm.
watch my podcast at all, like I'm pretty straightforward. I assume the worst. I hope for the best, but I'll I'll
Yeah.
explore all the way to the worst case scenarios. And she's quite aware, and we've made the kids aware
Yeah.
of potential, and that, what'll make the difference is how we act and how we react to what's going on. Now, what's
Right.
going on is depends on us. It's not something coming from the exterior. It's this
Mhm.
massive collective individual reaction that we're going to have, and we still have a lot of control on where it goes from here. So
Mhm.
if you break down and you let the world crumble around you, then that's what you're going to get. But if you rise to the
Mhm.
occasion and
Yeah.
become leaders in your community, then
Yeah.
there's your opportunity. So anyways,
Yeah.
getting back to number 7, integrate
Mhm.
the learning in daily activities. Okay, still a lot of things need to be done around the house, and
Oh yeah.
for kids to become adults, they need to participate. And one thing that really comes to mind for me, and I don't know if you can relate, you were homeschooled, so things were
Oh
probably
yeah.
better for you. But my mom
Mhm.
was more concerned about us making a mess in the kitchen than learning how to bake and cook and become autonomous and be able to prepare things for ourselves, right? So that
Mhm.
blocked our learning until, that's one thing I see a lot is like, well, kids are natural learners. They want to get out there and do stuff, and they want to
They
do the
do.
stuff that you do, right?
Mhm.
But if you block all those opportunities for them to do that, then that leaves them nothing left but to spend time and go play on the screen or whatever it is, because you've blocked the
Yeah.
other avenues. When Diego has been asking us to get a dog for quite some time, and like we couldn't really afford a dog. Ideally, like it wasn't really in our plans and stuff. But I told Julie, like, well, we can keep him from getting a dog, like not paying for the dog and all that. But then how can you blame him for spending so much time playing video games? He wants a
Right.
dog, but he can't have it. So what's he going to do? He's got to, his energy and
Yeah.
his attention has to go somewhere, right? So
Mhm.
we, when you respect that need of your children, instead of focusing on the behavior, you can
Yeah.
really change things around. So we made the hard decision to get a dog, and now he has no choices. He walks the dog, he picks up after him.
There it is.
He's been great. He was studying dog books the whole time when we were about to do it. He studied, putting his budget together, because he participated in paying for most of that dog and
Good.
the
Wow.
food
Mhm.
and
Yep.
and all that. So it's been a great learning experience that we would have completely avoided if we had made the decision
Yep.
to keep things the way they always had been.
Yeah. So
Um,
for us, like, with the way that I was raised, being homeschooled, with there's 4 of us, it was quite the opposite. I would say there was a lot of there was a lot of mess and busy things happening all the time. Our house was like full of different animals, and we always had chores, and we were never really paid for chores. We could have been, but we had to ask. So if we wanted to like make money for anything in particular, there would be sort of an extra job or chore that we could do. But we had a farm, and my mom always said, you have to contribute as a family to make things work, so feeding the animals in the barn is not like it's not a chore. Making your bed, it's not a chore you get paid for. Making the bed, helping clean up the kitchen after dinner, whatever that may be, that's just a part of being life, being in life. And that's something it's not always easy, because sometimes, depending on how exhausted you are or whatever it may be, you're kind of like, okay, am I really going to have him help the dishes? He might drop the dishes, the food might end up on the floor, and then da 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 da, right? But oh well, like, who cares? He's going to learn
well,
from that experience and move on and still help us work as a family. So that's what we try to do as well.
yeah, and picking up is part of the learning too. How do you
Absolutely.
clean
Oh
something
yeah.
up after you make a mess, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's always
if you
it's not
never
always
make a
as
mess, you
easy.
don't get to find out.
That's right. And we're not like, we kind of go in a couple of days where it'll just be projects here and this there, and the table's full of stuff, and the kitchen's kind of not really that clean. And then after a few days, it's like, okay, enough is enough. And with my 7-year-old, just for the age that he's at, we really we do a timer. We're like, okay, we're going to put some fun music on, and we're going to take 10, 15, or 20 minutes, depending on how bad the mess is. And we're going to just say, okay, this is our time. We're going to clean. And he loves it because he knows there's an end to it. And then once that kind of job is done, he can get on to something else. And he knows it's not going to be like, we're going to clean up and we have to keep cleaning. And then, oh, don't forget about this. So that's what works for us. And I would highly recommend it with that age group. It works really well.
Yeah, and you really want to reach out to kids where they're at, not where you want them to be. You don't want to
Yeah.
overwhelm them. And it really brings us to our next point here, which is invite, don't force.
Yeah.
Right? You want to invite them into your world. And if you have some cleaning to do, invite them to help you. Put on some music, do the dishes together, kind of dance around, make it fun. If you consider those chores like a hell sentence, then you can't expect them to be enthusiastic about it.
No.
Right?
They'll pick up on that. They know.
Right. And then, their attention span and their capacity to do
Yeah.
that work is limited. They're not adults. Respect that. When they're ready to go back to what they were doing, respect it, but always kind of invite them. If you start to force them, then they will only do it when they're forced. And that doesn't go away until that dynamic changes. So yeah. And then number 9 is be grateful. If you guys are all together, I think just the fact that parents and kids are going to spend so much time together will improve society in 10, 20 years, like multiple folds. I think that's been really lacking, is for people to really connect at their very basic relationships. Because once you establish proper, strong, bonding and good relationships with the people that are the closest to you, you can then extrapolate that to the rest of the world. But until you have those good relationships, you just bring the dysfunction into all the other relationships that you have. And I mean, that's something we've learned from some pretty hard lessons in life. And then number 10 is believe in your kids. All right. If you don't believe in them, they're not going to believe in themselves. Your kids are able to do and create and be so much more than you might think. And let them show you. Take the time. There's no, I mean, if your work is affected right now and you're stuck at home as well, and your kids are home for whatever, whether you're stuck because of them or because your work is stopped, you've got some time now. So, be grateful for that time and believe in your kids and really rebond. So those are kind of what I put down.
It's a good list, Claude. That's a good list.
So yeah.
So I did want to mention, I have started an online community for moms, and if they are interested, it's called Mama Needs a Timeout. You'll find it on Facebook. And really, I just share day in and day out things, but with sort of like an optimistic view about it, and make light of as much as we can. But a lot of moms also have used it as a platform to just be really honest and talk about, what their struggles and what their fears are. And it's just a safe, inviting place. And I just wanted to throw it out there. And even if Julie's wants to add me on Facebook or join the group, she's more than welcome on over. And we've had a lot of fun on there. In the course of the week, it's grown like crazy. And I just wanted to throw it out there. Some more moms that, have an outlet, I think the better it is for everybody.
So make sure you send me that in the maybe in my comments, or just send me that on Messenger there. I'll add that to the information on the video. This is going on YouTube and also on the podcast on Anchor, to be distributed on iTunes, Spotify, and multiple other platforms. And I just want to vouch for Hillary. I've seen her in action. I know that she lives the way that with the things she knows, and she can really have some good ideas for you. And I would take her advice if you have any questions. So I encourage you to get in touch, and I think she can certainly be a real leader and help you out. and we're worlds apart right now, but I feel so much closer. I'm so glad I contacted you because,
Yeah,
yeah,
thanks, Claude.
I
That's
think you're going
great.
to be one of those people that are really going to shine in this hard environment now. And you have an opportunity to be a leader because you've worked through a lot of things before this happened. And I think you'll do really well. So make sure you keep
Thank
in
you.
touch.
Absolutely. We'll do
All
this
right.
again sometime.
Do you have a YouTube channel?
I don't have a YouTube channel, but you can definitely find me on Instagram at Hillary's Silver Lining. And then again, the Facebook group, Mama Needs a Timeout. So you are welcome to find me on those two platforms, and definitely, shoot me a personal message and talk about whatever's going on. I'm always here to listen.
Okay. And you can certainly link this video in your Instagram account and on Facebook as well.
Yeah,
All
perfect.
right.
Okay, we'll chat soon. Take care, everybody.
Great
Stay
talking to
healthy
you.
and happy. Bye.
Bye-bye. So I'm just going to